Alright, hey guys, welcome to my first impressions early thoughts video on Sonic Frontiers. Before we get started here, I just want to let you know you're watching this video on my second channel, PeteDorr Plays, which is where I tend to post these sort of early impressions videos now and in the future, as well as other fun gameplay videos for my streams. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you do so. Anyway, I wanted to make this video as a quick companion sort of get my opinion out there on this game because I'm going to be getting asked a lot as I'm doing my first playthrough of Sonic Frontiers. My thoughts in this video are based on my first 7 to 7.5 hours with the game from my first stream with it last night, and I have been impressed with Sonic Frontiers as a whole. There's a couple of bullet points that I'm going to go over, but let's start with the elephant in the room, and that is the open world itself. I was a little conflicted on this when I first started playing the game, but that's because I didn't quite see their full vision for what they wanted these, as they call, open zones to be. And I don't think you fully realize the potential of Sonic Frontiers until you make it to about that 5 or 6 hour mark into the game. Now, there might be ever so slight spoilers here a little bit later into the video. So just to, I'm not going to spoil anything big, but I'm going to talk about locations that you may not be aware that are coming in the game. I'm not far in, like I said, this is about 7 hours into the game. So the open world aspect of this, you quickly realize that the mission structure of games like Sonic Forces, Sonic Generations, that sort of like quick little minor hub world, and then you jump straight back into these really short mission-based levels, like a classic Sonic game, where instead of just giving you these boring hub worlds like Sonic Forces, which I think is one of the worst in the series history, with just talking heads and a story that I had no interest in, Sonic Frontiers really builds upon this sort of robust hub world. But I'd argue that it's more than just a hub world. The open world stuff is the game, and the mission stuff is just super secondary to it. And I think I really realized what their true vision was for this when there's a lot of complaints about the game being empty, feeling empty, but when you play this game, when you actually play it and not just watch somebody play it, I feel like it's really robust and just brimming with things to do and explore. It's like a theme park style game where there's just always something where you see off in the distance, like, oh, I want to go check that out, or oh, I see an item over here that I need. And then you quickly come to discover that most of the game itself is sort of hidden vertically in the level design. So what do I mean by this? There might be a little bumper pad or a zip pad off in the distance, and you're like, oh, it's just a bumper pad, I'm sure it's just some rings. But then you suddenly take this jump and you're scaling this giant rail segment with jumps, or you're scaling this giant structure with a Chaos Emerald on top. And you come to realize that this game is just as big expansively from top or bottom to top than it is like as an expanse horizontally in the landscape itself of the bottom half of the open world. So it's like, instead of it just being a flat plane that you explore, it's like you're exploring this giant 3D box playground with all these rails and ways that sort of like shortcut. You do one thing here and you do one thing here, and it opens up a rail that can be used for quick travel. And then, just when you're getting tired of this open mission structure or this open zone structure, you have the mission levels that are sort of like challenge levels that are quick 30-second to like 2 or 3 minute levels that you would come to expect from the series. And I have to say, the one thing that I feel that is holding Sonic Frontiers back is Sega has this fixation where they feel like every 3D Sonic game that comes out needs 2D side-scrolling levels. I wish they would drop that from the 3D games entirely. It is by far the weakest point of this game. That's why we have games like Sonic Mania, where, people that want that side-scrolling fix, they can get it. The 2D levels in this game and the missions are by far, they just need to remove it at this point. Give us a 3D Sonic game and let us play a 3D Sonic game. The 3D levels are really fun. They're sort of like these surreal takes on past callbacks to Sonic themed levels from his long history. And then you get these 2D levels that are just like, once again, really boring, mundane, kind of slow, weirdly scaled segments that just don't feel super good. I will give it to them, they feel better than they did in Sonic Forces, but they just need to give it the axe. Let a 3D Sonic game be a 3D Sonic game. So, rant out of the way there. I don't want this video to be too long, so let's move on to the next point. And I think it kind of plays into these areas in general, but let's touch upon the music actually really quickly. It's not what I was expecting. The music has taken me by surprise. It's starting to grow on me. I haven't, as of yet, heard any callbacks to classic Sonic music. Some of the music really shocked me. I'm not going to spoil anything here for those of you that plan on playing the game, but you get to some of these songs in the game and you're like, whoa, okay. that's different. I do wish the game had more cheesy vocal tracks. I think those are by far the best because I just love cheesy lyrics in Sonic games. Really over the top, sort of like, rock music and such. But the music has been a pleasant surprise, like really surprise, and I'm starting to get used to it. It's sort of like these 90s like drum and bass style tracks that I really like. I like the music from Sonic Forces, and I'm kind of glad to see that make a return here. The controls, I never thought I'd be saying this in the same sentence, but this is not only the fastest Sonic game I've ever played, but the best controlling Sonic game I've ever played. I know, those two things normally don't go together, but there are mechanics in this game that make Sonic go so fast that you look at the screen and you just can't believe what you're seeing. Because normally, when Sonic goes really fast in these games, you're crashing in the walls, you're hitting corners, you're falling off of things. But in this game, you have full control, and it works really well. I don't know what they did to the controls. I don't know if they're using some sort of like AI on the fly sort of like auto correction system, sort of like what they did with Kirby on the Switch, where they would sort of like correct your angle even if it wasn't quite right to make it feel like it's working. I don't know what they did to the controls, but they nailed it in this game. And with the open zones where you can just zip around these things freely and feel good doing it because you're not constantly hitting things and falling off of things, it really is a lot of fun to run through these areas and just feel like Sonic. Feel like you're actually going fast in a Sonic game without consequences. So I'm really loving the controls. And that kind of leads me into my next point, which is the combat. So far, I have actually been really enjoying the combat. Now, this is something that I predicted when I first saw the first gameplay they released for this game. I looked at the combat and I said, huh, that looks really heavy. That looks really impactful. It looks like there's a lot of weight behind the combat. I said, I think if they could pull this off, it's going to be one of the strongest points of the game. And I definitely feel that way. The combat feels really good. There's a lot of weight behind your moves. You gradually get new moves that all feel really good. I think the hardest thing to grasp is just remembering all the moves you have and how to do them and how to string them all together. But the combat has been a really pleasant surprise. I didn't think Sonic would really work as a beat-em-up hybrid, but I'm really enjoying it so far, and I still got some moves to unlock and see what more surprises they can bring. Graphically, I'm conflicted on the graphics. I think the actual open world environments are absolutely stunning sometimes. Sometimes when you just sit there and you sit on an edge and you look out at the open world, this is going to be a slight spoiler here, but in terms of areas in the game, I'm going to talk about the second area of the game. It is a desert, and normally I don't like desert areas in games, but this is one of the best looking desert landscapes I've ever seen in a video game. There's this day-night cycle that really like gradually, and sometimes suddenly, not always gradually, changes from day to night, and it just makes these places look beautiful in this game. Really stunning. The character models, the textures, yeah, they look last gen. They don't look that amazing, but the actual environments themselves with the lighting and the colors, really nice, especially when it's running at a rock solid 60 frames per second. I'm playing on the PS5 version, and I think it generally just looks super impressive. And in the mission levels where you have like time attack and such like that, they're sort of like these surreal takes of like digitized backgrounds, or just like I don't know how to describe it. It's just very cool looking, sort of like strung together elements of Sonic's past, like Chemical Plant or Green Hill Zone, and it's just really Cine Escape and such. It looks really cool, and it's a nice contrast to one another. Just to jump back to the open world gameplay aspect, when you're getting tired of the open world, you can jump into a mission, tackle some of them, and get your fill with some more faster paced, more confined linear gameplay, and then jump back out into the open world. So I think it's a really nice contrast. And the story, for once, normally I don't care about story in Sonic games lately, especially after Sonic Forces, but I feel like this is a story that is, I'm not like on the edge of my seat, but I'm like, okay, I want to see where this goes. This is somewhat interesting. It's definitely a more darker, more mature Sonic story from what I've played so far. It's definitely doing some certain themes that I was never going to expect from a Sonic game in terms of dealing with like life and death and sacrifice and such like that. And Sonic's secondary friends kind of take a back seat as like these weird holograms in this game, which is a really interesting interaction. It kind of takes on this very ethereal, empty feeling kind of world and story building that they're doing. I don't know. I think the story is all right. So there you go, guys. I know this video went a little longer than I wanted it to, but how can I not talk about Sonic Frontiers, kind of in an extensive manner for my first impressions of it. So I'm still in the middle of the game. I think I'm maybe like a third of the way through maybe. So I'm going to be continuing to stream the game on Twitch, and eventually I will give you guys my final thoughts on my main channel. Anyway, thank you for watching this first impressions video, and I hope you, maybe this has convinced you to check out the game. I do think you don't have to be a fan of Sonic to enjoy this one. If you just like open world games and platformers, this would be a Sonic game to jump back in if you've kind of been missing out on the series for a while for one reason or another. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you in the next video.